are these people?
You know, we're not really that critical, and we don't talk necessarily about Ukraine because we know it's just literally a proxy for NATO. So they're just a vassal. We really are focusing on where the money's coming from, and that's what we're going to talk about tonight. That's next, which is our Fuck Israel segment, because we have to do one every week. This is Fuck Israel. We have to. They're making us do this because they keep doing this. So the first one's a short story, and I didn't even want to bring this, but man, it's so powerful. And the basics, and I think you talked about, you talked about this on Wednesday night. I think this kind of inspired that too, about a woman and privacy and how she feels. What was the word that you used on the
starvation?
Suffocation.
That's what it is.
Suffocation. How she feels suffocated mentally because she can't even cry in peace. But this goes even further.
Yep.
Right? Because Mondoweiss, another Indie Media Award honoree, outstanding publication. Please support them if you can. All right, we need independents like this that are user-funded, that don't take big money funding. All right, the war where women's bodies lost their rights. The war in Gaza is not only the story of rubble and airstrikes, it's a story of a girl getting her period under bombardment, the mother bleeding in silence and miscarrying on cold floors giving birth under drones. Like, this is what they're living with right now. That was from Beit Lahia, February 20th. That's Getty Image or APA Images. Yeah. This woman says, in October, I bled for 10 days without access to a proper bathroom. The house we fled to, like most shelters in Gaza, had no privacy. 40 people slept in 2 rooms. The bathroom had no door, only a torn curtain. I remember waiting for everyone to sleep so I could clean myself with a bottle of water and scraps of cloth. I remember praying I wouldn't stain the mattress I shared with 3 other cousins. I remember the shame, not of my body, but of being unable to care for it. In war, the body loses its rights, especially the female body. The headlines rarely speak of this.
Who are these people? Who are these people?
Thank you. Thank you.
Hey,
the headlines
appreciate it, fam.
Rarely speak of this, of what it means for a girl to get her period under bombardment, of mothers, again, forced to bleed in silence and miscarry on cold floors and give birth under drones. The war in Gaza is not only a story of rubble and airstrikes, it's a story of bodies interrupted, invaded, and denied rest. And yet somehow these bodies continue. They have no choice. That's how life works. As a Palestinian woman and a displaced student now living in Egypt, I carry this bodily memory with me. Not as a metaphor, but as a fact. My body still flinches at loud noises. My digestion falters. My sleep comes in fragments. I know many women, friends, relatives, neighbors who've developed chronic illnesses during the war, who lost their periods for months, whose breasts dried up while trying to breastfeed in shelters. What happens when you can't get clean water? War enters the body like an illness and stays. Israel enters the body like an illness and stays in this case. Sorry, I'm going to say it. Not her. The Gazan body is a map of interruption. It learns early to contract itself, to take up less space, to stay alert, to suppress desire, hunger, bleeding. The public nature of displacement destroys privacy while the constant fear gnaws at the nervous system. Women who once guarded their modesty now change clothes in front of strangers. Girls stop talking about their cycles. Dignity becomes a burden that no one can afford. This is the paradox of survival. The same body that's denied safety becomes the instrument of resistance. Women boil lentils over candlelight. They calm children in basements. They cradle the dying. These acts aren't passive. They are radical. Yes. To menstruate, to carry, to feed, to soothe amid destruction is to insist on life. She returns, this woman, again and again to the image of her mother during the war. Her back hunched over a pot, her hands shaking, her eyes scanning the ceiling with every sound. This did not start October 7th. She didn't eat until everyone else did.
No.
She didn't sleep until the kids did. Her body bore the architecture of war and motherhood all at once. She says she realizes now how political her exhaustion was, how her labor, like that of so many Palestinian women, defied the logic of annihilation, and we're going to use that word in a moment. That's Miriam Khateeb. There is no tent for the body in Gaza. No safe space where the female body can unfold without fear. The war strips us bare, not only of our homes and belongings, but of the rituals that make us human. Bathing, menstruating, grieving in private. But without even shelter our bodies endure, they remember, they resist. And maybe in their trembling persistence, they write the truest history of all. And I don't want stories like this to end up erased and ignored and disappear. And that's why I bring them here.
Yeah.
Because this shit needs to be told. We cannot let this get swept under the rug. We did this. Israel did this. We, the collective we, as the United States, did this. Armed and funded this. Don't turn away. So fuck Israel for that. Annihilation. Speaking of annihilation, oh my God, which is perfect from an account called I Really Hate You. This is the Gaza Strip. The entire red zone is now an annihilation zone, as the Israeli army calls it. They want to put all 2 million Palestinian people into these little camps, which are concentrated in certain areas. Huh. Camps that are concentrated. Yep. Where have I heard that before? And of course, that doesn't mean they'll stop bombing the green zone, as I Really Hate You reminds us.
Yep.
It just means that that's the only place they're allowed to go now, because the rest of it's going to become a construction zone. And notice that they've already gotten sections of waterfront property marked off as their own. So fuck Israel for that. Next. Narrative change time. Hey, let's play a little video here. Anybody hear about this? So, on May 21st, what day was that? I think you did. That was Wednesday morning. On Wednesday morning, the IDF opened fire on foreign diplomats. Obviously, they were unarmed and not terrorists, but the IDF thought they were civilians and, of course, needed to be slaughtered. So let's listen to these 15 seconds. Oh, my God.
Diplomatic community.
جيش الاحتلال يطلق النار على الوفد خلال تواجدنا
يطلق النار بشكل مباشر. بشكل
مباشر. هي.
Thanks. So they apologized for that.
Christ.
So they apologized and we're like, yeah, sorry.
We're sorry.
We're sorry.
We're sorry.
We're sorry. We're so sorry. Right? Okay, well.
Jesus Christ.
But somebody decided that a narrative change was necessary, and let's see why. Here's what happened. So Rob Durden, our brother at INN, check out my one-on-one with Rob Durden from end of March, which you can find at INNnewsletter.com, among other places. May 21st, it was all about the foreign diplomats coming under Israeli fire on official West Bank visit. Huh. Why? Warning shots. The army fired warning shots at French and other diplomats. A little bit more detail. UK calls for an investigation. Huh. And Israel was condemned over their troops being in the occupied West Bank firing warning shots. So,
Nothing to see here.
the next day, that night, there was a shooting in front of the Holocaust Museum in D.C., and now the narrative tended to change. Instantly, overnight, all those headlines were gone. Nobody was calling any outcry for anything over a... Wait, diplomats got shot at? What?
It's a psyop.
So, remember they got shot at. Okay. let's hear what our friend Fiorella has to say. Fiorella Isabel, independent journalist, Indie Media Award honoree, of course, inaugural class 2022. She's over on Substack. This is substack.com/@FiorellaIsabel. She says on notes, let me make it very clear. The assassination of Israeli, which is funny, Christian Zionist embassy staff by Elias Rodriguez is the confessed shooter, allegedly, is extremely suspect, as he reportedly stayed and ensured everyone filmed him shouting Free Palestine, and the manifesto released to one of the most unreliable establishment sources cosplaying as an independent journalist.
Fucking flippin' douche.
In a process
Sorry,
we know
I'll
nothing
say it.
In a process we know nothing about. Well, we've been here before, haven't we? False flags are as American as apple pie. And let's remind everyone.
Come on.
And let's remind everyone that false flags don't mean that nobody gets hurt. It just means that it's designed to change a narrative and to shift public perception over what actually happened. And in this case, what actually happened was that Israel was shooting at diplomats and they needed a narrative change. So somebody decided, well, let's activate this. Now, what's really interesting is that the guy at the embassy was a Christian Zionist. He wasn't even Jewish, and we'll talk about that with the way they've been trying to conflate Judaism and Zionism, but ignore the Christian Zionist side. I thought it was interesting how they brought that in, but she continues and says that this also comes as Israel unleashed one of its worst massacres in recent history against Gaza refugees, killing at least 500 souls in a week. And we didn't even mention that. And I'm sorry for not.
Nope.
The majority of the world has turned against it for its months of atrocities, year and a half plus. So sure, something like this would, in the West, affect the protesting and support. It would work in favor of Israel to a degree, but for the people saying this is going to hurt the movement for Palestine, I ask, what movement and from what? The U.S. media and government have been not only ignoring this genocide for almost 2 years, but entirely justifying it while our government funds it. The Palestinian movement as a whole has been vilified and persecuted by both Democrats and Republicans and is now being used to expand the surveillance state. In the U.S., this movement is very weak and relies on a lack of understanding about the history of U.S. interventionism and foreign policy related to Palestine. Totally agree. How can you, when it's happening to, and our tax dollars are complicit in a modern day Holocaust? Are you truly standing against it by not doing enough? If it weren't this incident, they just use another or even manufacture consent like they've been doing by making Zionists the victims as they murder children on the daily. The baby murder is just insane to me. Most in West Asia didn't bat an eye other than to laugh if we in the West think we'll stop focusing on what Israel's doing over this. All right. It's what you believe. Well, you know nothing about armed resistance or the plight of Palestinians, if that's what you believe. Whether the manifesto is real, of course, is inherently correct in its statement, especially this, quote, the atrocities committed by the Israelis against Palestine defy description and defy quantification, unquote. Almost like it was written at Langley. Zionists don't need an excuse. They'll create one as they have for decades. Western pundits merely focused on how bad is this for Palestine are thinking about their own virtue signals as children are being starved to death, families are being bombed, and people burned alive in refugee camps and hospitals full of rubble. They condemn what Yemen's doing as an act of war, what protesters do, what Aaron Bushnell did, what Luigi Mangione allegedly did is going too far. And what he's accused of doing, at least. Is it when nothing changes? Doesn't the fault lie on the lack of action as the ultimate culprit, as these consequences of these silent perpetrators? In war, it does. And we're at war against a fascist entity, whether we realize it or not. Hundreds of thousands are being exterminated in a Holocaust. And if you think an act of either desperation or entire manipulation is going to throttle a movement that's inherent in every Palestinian and resistance-born human that experienced such violence and destruction, you couldn't even conceive it in your mind, you don't understand resistance at all. So kindly to all clutching their pearls about how this goes too far, to those with wide open mouths, aghast, saying they condemn the heinous act, no one cares about your condemnations or your virtue signals. Ever so kindly, shut the entire fuck up, sit down, and learn a bit about the world outside your safe Western quarters. You wouldn't survive even half a day. And she links to the alleged manifesto. And here's the video where he's not beaten up by cops. He's handled awfully well. He's not muffled. And then he's allowed to sit on a bench right there on the other side of the door. Like, really? Really? This is allegedly the guy that did it. He murdered two people in cold blood, admits he did it. And they treated him like this? Now.
Inconceivable!
Right? Inconceivable! I love him. Wallace Shawn. Now.
Inconceivable.
Infee's mentions or replies here was something from BetBeat Media. And I wanted to bring this up because I like Kareem and I like Peter, and go support them. They're outstanding. They did a great sit down with Fee and Vanessa recently. And they replied to Fiorella and asked that the false flag seems so stupid to me. Targeting Israelis is something many people now really don't even care about, which I guess. But if you do a false flag, wouldn't you target a synagogue to show, hey, look how these pro-Palestinians are anti-Semitic? You see? See, but I think that's just the opposite.
They did do
Go ahead.
the Museum of the Holocaust.
Right. They did it at the Holocaust Museum. Right. But I said to I think it's Kareem who replies on the BetBeat account, just the opposite. It's the fact that it happened on American soil that changes how most Americans see this, sadly, versus the genocide halfway around the world. They're completely disconnected from it, unfortunately. We're not. Like, we bleed this shit every day. We see this in our feeds, and we're screaming about it daily. We're showing it on our shows. We're sharing it with people anyone who look at it. B, if it were a synagogue, it would only be directed at Jews. But this is a Christian Zionist murdered in a public place. Zionists will still call this anti-Semitism, claiming that the murderer didn't even know that this guy was a Christian and that they're not just targeting quote-unquote Jews in synagogues. Now they have to fear being anywhere in public, even at a Holocaust museum. He was a volunteer for the IDF, right? See, this is a way to get Christians upset at Israel for bringing upon this kind of violence now to American soil. My feeling is that it was the press coverage surrounding that IDF shooting at the delegation of Ramallah in the West Bank, what we showed earlier, that likely led to someone calling to trigger the false flag op, allegedly, to change the news coverage overnight. False flag doesn't mean nobody ends up hurt. It's actually part of the op. And I mentioned to him that I was going to talk about this. All right. Were they at the Holocaust Museum to try to pick up some? No, Mastermind Hour. There was a private event there. It closed at 5 o'clock. There was a private event, and they were leaving the private event, and somebody jumped out and shot them. Murder. Terrible. It's terrible. Look. We don't want to see anybody killed on American soil. I mean, I'm not going to clutch my pearls. This guy volunteered to be in the IDF and to protect the Israeli embassy. Then he was invited to this Holocaust Museum thing. Again, it's a terrible story because he was engaged, right? More ways to garner sympathy. He's got a pregnant wife. They killed the wife too, right? I believe it was the husband-wife thing. So narrative change. We need that. Now, what's interesting is Nick did a really good video about this. So I'm going to bring this. It's about a 3-minute video for Hotspot. And my comment on this was that all of this, I would only add again, that the result mostly benefits Israel's agenda in multiple ways, including stoking anti-Iranian sentiment, because they could potentially pin it on a hitman. I'm waiting for the announcement that connects the murderer to Iran to fit the narrative that CIA, Plan Beitar, and Mossad want to push, because we know that they're looking toward that. But they also do want to propagandize the Christians in America to support war with Iran, potentially. And if this was an Iranian, maybe, or somebody supporting it, and what they've been doing is saying that Iran supports the Palestinian people. So by extension, now you've got Iran supporting Palestinians, and this kid supports Palestinians, so therefore Iran. Forget Israel. Don't look at Israel. Don't look at Israel, whatever you do. Okay? So here's Nick's video. All right, let me unmute and let's start that again. Let's go.
A former IDF war criminal was smoked outside of a Jewish museum in Washington, D.C. by a lone shooter who was arrested while shouting "Free Palestine." Free, free Palestine! Free, free Palestine! Free, free Palestine! I'm sorry, but this story just absolutely reeks of a false flag. Wait, you're telling me that this shooter killed 2 members of the protected class while being arrested peacefully and given an opportunity to have a glamour shot and scream "Free Palestine" at the camera? Well, I guess our First Amendment is officially done for. Whether this is a false flag or not is mostly irrelevant. Our government will still take advantage of this to roll back our rights and expand state power. The talking points are already out, with Zionists claiming that the Free Palestine movement want to globalize the Intifada and murder all Jews. No, we want you guys to stop murdering children.
This is a moment when we need to look ourselves in the mirror and say, we've got to stop this because the consequences are deadly.
When you have protesters chanting "globalize the Intifada" in the streets of major cities, this is what they mean.
Free Palestine. We hear that on the streets, we hear that on college campuses, and there are a lot of people who have been worried that that has been turned into a call to arms and a call to action and violence.
In World War II, we did not negotiate a surrender with the Nazis. We did not negotiate a surrender with the Japanese. We nuked the Japanese twice in order to get unconditional surrender. That needs to be the same here.
You guys see how the story is designed to distract from the fact that these people are committing a genocide, and the fact that they want to legitimize their anti-Semitism hoax so they can crack down on the free speech of Americans? The guy that was murdered wasn't even Jewish. He's a Christian Zionist traitor who served in the IDF, who called for Israel to murder more children. Direct action targeting genocide supporters have nothing to do with Jewish hate or anti-Semitism. So false flag or not, you guys notice how the ruling class takes advantage of these events in order to push their narrative and crack down on dissent. And this is something that we should absolutely not tolerate.
Dude, fire. That Nick nailed it. Seriously, Nick nailed that. All right. So shout out to Nick on that. Also, by the way, he uses Zay Squirrel's tweet. Zay Squirrel's been all over this too. So again, because of all of that, why is that happening? All of that's happening because Israel is dropping bombs on kids. Stop murdering kids. The kids go home, we go home, and we stop screaming about that for now, and then give the land back and do all the other things that we've been saying that you need to do because you've made it untenable for them. Now what are you going to do? You've turned the whole place into a wasteland. Now you're trying to either offload them or murder them. Who knows? Pushing them into these 3 little camps. What camps? That are concentrated outside the Annihilation Zone? The red is the Annihilation Zone. Again, reminder, Annihilation Zone. Holy shit. The last thing I wanted to talk about were the spy flights. Now, Declassified UK, and specifically Matt Kennard, who started tracking this, has been tracking for months how the UK has been using its bases in Cyprus and elsewhere to provide air support and spy flights on behalf of Israel over Gaza.
Yep.
And what I've done
You
here
didn't
is documented just a half dozen of them here and brought a bunch of them showing exactly. And he's got like flight patterns and paths and plane numbers. The Ministry of Defense has confirmed to declassified UK spy flights to Israel will continue. RAF spy flights heading to Gaza have left the UK base on Cyprus 5 of the last 6 days, according to flight data. They track this. And look at that. It kind of disappears off radar right before it hits to this area right here. Huh. I wonder why they went dark. Interesting. All right. So that was May 20th. That was on Tuesday. But this is not new. So this was back in April. You had Matt Kennard. All right. Last week, a U.S. military CN-235 went from Britain's base to Cyprus to Tel Aviv, believed to be used by special forces. Okay. UK government refuses to divulge any information about U.S. use of RAF Akrotiri, that's Cyprus, including what planes are landing or what they're carrying. That's weird. We think that this might have been actually for the delegation that was scheduled to go for Trump and or Vance even potentially. All right. But we're speculating. We don't know. Here's another one. All right. And this again was from April 29th. All right. As Mustafa signed this new memorandum of understanding with David Lammy, the foreign secretary, the UK literally had a spy plane in the air over Gaza collecting intel for Israel to help it carry out its genocide. All right. Palestinian Authority is co-opted Vichy regime. 7 UK soldiers are permanently based in Ramallah training its security forces. What does that tell you about the Palestinian Authority?
They eat their own. Go check the segment.
Okay. Now, this was back on May 1st. Yesterday, Keir Starmer sent a huge A400M military transport plane from the UK base in Cyprus to Tel Aviv. The A400M can carry 116 soldiers and an array of weapons, including Chinook helicopters. Britain is a participant in the Gaza genocide. You, British citizens, are paying for this. There's the flight. Wee-hoo. Not cool. Amazing work by Matt. Okay. And then on May 2nd, the next day, Britain is still sending spy flights over Gaza to gather intelligence for Israel on its imprisoned, starved population. This one was in the sky over Gaza last night as Israel's drones bombed the aid flotilla in international waters. ICC must intervene as a matter of urgency. Well, we saw what they did to the ICC. They sanctioned the lead prosecutor and charged him with a crime. Yeah. Fake news. Yeah. Fake news. Hilarious.
This is meanwhile while Starmer and fucking other bullshit are trying to feign fucking sympathy.
Yes.
Like, fuck you.
All right. Here's Craig Murray. Israel bombed the civilian cargo vessel in international waters off Malta carrying just aid and peace campaigners. It was the one that Greta was supposed to be on. All right. Yeah. Spy flights. Here's another one. May 6th. Last night, a U.S. military C-295 plane flew from U.S.-UK base on Cyprus to Tel Aviv. Labor is refusing to divulge any info about American use of Akrotiri. This plane is used by special forces. It parked in Israel for 2 hours and then flew back. What was it dropping off? Soldiers, equipment. Who knows? So that's the spy flights. And finally, I wanted to make mention, because I saw this come up today, and we have been talking about Dr. Hussam Abu Safiya since he walked up to that tank and got into the back of it which was apparently 150 days ago. He's still sitting in an Israeli prison somewhere being tortured, potentially. We don't know what his condition is, and even if he's alive at this point. My guess is if he weren't, they would tell us. But we don't know.
Yeah.
That was earlier tonight, and I wanted to add that to the deck in order to bring that tonight. So thank you, Jimmy J, for the win, for keeping Hussam Abu Safiya's case and story active. So, fuck Israel, like I keep saying repeatedly.
Free Palestine!
If you're able to, Adam means please support the independent media you want to see. Those are the amazing people that have already done so. The ways to do it are Cash App, $, Indie News Network, Kodashfee.com/Indie News Network, PayPal.me/Indie News Network, and at INNnewsletter.com. Continue to support independent media because we need it more than ever. So many propagandists out there. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next week. Take care, everyone. No! We just fucking lost the stream!
Can't keep giving us nothing and think we're bluffing about coming for your heads. Why play civil if you won't listen? To 50,000 died, and now we know our mission. We form a militia, make Congress a prison.